No one's quick to link anything to the fires here, but yeah, I know in my heart that the breathing issues happened straight after the fires, if not during. Give me a cup. He was a healthy 1-year-old before the smoke. He's now on an asthma plan for his preschool, and he has a preventer in the morning and a preventer at night. And if he doesn't have that preventer, he has a really bad day.
Come on, Colt, William.
It's taken a toll on him for sure, and most likely on Ventolin for the rest of his life. Would he have got it? It's an answer I'll never know.
The 2019-2020 summer here in Australia is known as Black Summer. You regularly hear Australia described like a tinderbox during that fire season. It really was a big build-up. As we've seen, the fires burnt for weeks and weeks on end.
We're about 400 metres still to go.
It was the driest year in record, and sure enough, the fire season started very early, and it went on to be unprecedented in the scale of destruction.
There are downright apocalyptic images coming out of Australia right now as the country's battling hundreds of fires that have burned across the country for months now.
It's been labelled the worst fire season ever recorded, an apocalypse, a nightmare, and like looking into the gates of hell.
Wildfires have always been part of Australia, but what is concerning is that they seem to be becoming more intense and really widespread.
It burned through 24 million hectares of land. That's like burning half of California or burning all of the UK in one fire season.
Remarkably, smoke can now be seen 12,000 kilometres away.
The smoke from the Australia bushfires has now reached all the way to South America.
The massive bushfires now visible from space, engulfing the size of more than 50 New York cities.
%80 of the population was exposed to wildfire smoke during that period, and obviously that has a huge impact right across the population. What we were specifically looking at was women who were pregnant during that time and young children.
So at the time, it was my husband and I, and then my eldest, Hayley, she was 5. My son was 1, just 1 and 1 month, and I was pregnant about 12 to 14 weeks, roughly, with Laura. It was this unspoken thing between everyone that this year was different. This was going to be big, and we knew in the lead up, even before the fire actually sparked, we knew that it was going to happen. We were so vulnerable because our property is surrounded, not just the back, surrounded. That's why we evacuated so many times, because of my fear of being stuck in this one-way alley. We already knew that if it hit, when it hit, who was staying? Now looking back, some type of silly plan, and none of that came to. It was bigger than what we all anticipated. I remember that we got into town, took the kids with us, and our neighbour rang, my girlfriend. I could hear the crackle behind her, and she's screaming at me to come back. Come back, where is everyone? Come back. It's here, it's here. And panic just immediately took over your body, and Luke just floored it back here. The road into our property, you can see the flumes of smoke. It wasn't in the distance anymore. It was really close. I just remember saying, is this it? Is this it now? And he cried. He said, just go, honey, just go. I'll call you later. And I said, I love you. And he goes, I love you too. Just go.
We knew when we took on this story there was a huge amount of literature and academic research on this topic, because Australia and California, other territories, Southeast Asia, they'd been suffering fires to some degree in recent years. But most of them were moment-in-time studies that captured the immediate after effects of a certain fire. They had plenty of snapshots, but no really longitudinal studies of the long-term impact. Certainly not on babies and children. Academics didn't really know what the long-term consequences might have been from a very severe fire. And it was the long period of Black Summer, up to 19 weeks of continuous fire that really marked this out. And we've never had that before. What does that do to people's bodies? Those are the kind of questions that academics face now that stops us really knowing the full picture.
Hello, girls. As a community GP living here in the country, I really am at the front line. So I have seen my patients coming in with all sorts of problems related to the bushfires. The main issue for so many parents, and mothers in particular, were what to do and how, if the fire came close to their house. So we didn't really understand then the impact that smoke has on pregnant women. Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Nate. Hi, darling. And how are you?
So we're good.
You're good. I was starting to see in some of my patients babies having some growth issues, so not growing as well. Good boy. Yes, we can listen. What we did start to see at the end of the natural pregnancies is babies being born early, so preterm. Increased problems for the mother, such as blood pressure issues of pregnancy, increased risk of babies born small, babies born early, increased risk of placental dysfunction, increased mental health, like a vast physical and mental severe impact on women who are pregnant. What was alarming to me is that I was looking after women at birth who were delivering babies, again preterm, babies who were small, but babies that had diseased placentas. There was one particular case that really made me sit up and start to take notice of this whole issue, and it was a woman whose baby was born early, the baby was born smaller, but what really struck me was her comments about her placenta. And she was told that her placenta looked like she'd been a smoker, a pack-a-day smoker. And the midwives were all around a circle looking at this placenta. They took photos of it and they said, "You're a smoker." And she denied it. She said, "I've never smoked in my life." And the midwives go, "Well, this placenta looks like you're a pack-a-day smoker." And the woman came and told me that afterwards, and she was horrified and said, "If that's what was happening to my placenta, how does this affect my baby?"
Raging bushfires in Australia have pushed the air quality index in Sydney to 11 times higher than hazardous levels. People have been urged to stay indoors as a shroud of smoke chokes the city.
A haze of smoke blanketed the harbour city for most of the day. Air quality pushed beyond hazardous levels.
Walking around Sydney at the height of the Black Summer would be equivalent to smoking 37 cigarettes in one day. So closer to the fires, it would be more than that. So we can extrapolate a little bit. We're not just flying blind with this. We do have some scientific information. It's there.
From the New South Wales-Victoria border all the way to the Central Coast, 9 blazes reached emergency warning level today. Here's what we know right now.
So up here, the houses up here, to your right on the hill up above us, they were all catching fire. Everyone was on a mission to get out of here or get to loved ones, and everyone drove the same, so you didn't know what each other's missions were, and it was every man for himself. I took a video from there. When we crossed the bridge, you can kind of see where we live when you go across the bridge. We live a good 20 minutes away from the bay in bush. And I remember we all just looked in this utter silence of where our families were.
Yeah. I don't know how safe we are, honey, here.
And it was just like a big mushroom bomb had gone off. It was an angry smoke, if that makes sense. And no one uttered a word because we're all thinking the same thing. We went to this apartment that was owned by some random who was so kind to open their doors, and when the red glow happened and when it hit the bay, that's where we were. We're all just had our own little areas. A little bit up the steps is where I kind of sat with my kids and holding Colt. And one of our friends, she was there and she was kind of in charge, you know. She was giving out face washes. And a lot of people were coughing. And put these on your kids, you know, hide under the towel. And I remember specifically Coldy, he was coughing different to everyone else. I put him under my shirt. I had him here and I was trying to just shelter him from the smoke, but all your windows were shut. The smoke was still coming in under the door. We'd had smoke weeks and weeks before, but this was another level smoke. This was choking smoke. It was right here smoke, not far away.
Parents we've spoken to have spoken about a range of physical health impacts on their children, such as respiratory problems, a reliance on Ventolin. A family we spoke to had a baby come early during that fire season, and they've had a lot of difficulties in reaching growth and development milestones as well. Some of the more troubling things that we've heard from interviewing parents throughout the course of this investigation has been around the cognitive impacts. So things like mobility and balance are linked to that, speech development as well. I think what's the most shocking thing when you start looking into this space is globally air pollution is a real problem, not just from wildfire smoke, but from traffic, construction. A whole range of factors in our environment will expose large swathes of the population to poor air quality. And what wildfire smoke does on top of that is add another toxic mix into the atmosphere.
Air pollution is a universal exposure, and for that reason it's really important in shaping the health of populations all over the world. One of the most important sources of pollution is combustion. Could be petrol, could be oil, it could be wood. When you burn, you get a lot of smoke, and that smoke contains lots of different particles and it contains lots of gases. But the most studied and the most important for human health is the suspended tiny particles. So we often talk about PM 2.5 as one marker of particles, and that's that smaller size class. Anything smaller than 2.5 will enter into your lungs and cross into your bloodstream. And when you're burning wood or bushfires, that kind of, we call it biomass combustion, that generates a lot of PM 2.5 and far smaller size classes. So it's a really important source of harmful particles in the air. So when you breathe particles in, your body will react to it. And it does that in a whole lot of ways. It increases cells that fight infection throughout the body. It increases blood glucose. It increases your stress hormone cortisol. It can make your cardiovascular system more stressed. These are all tiny changes designed to look after you in the face of a threat, but in their own right, they're what's responsible for most of the health effects we see in large-scale population health studies.
I just couldn't escape this smoke. I couldn't escape it, and that was what was so frustrating. And I even remember putting his cot in the bathroom and just trying to lock that small space in to try and stop the smoke, and I put clothes in under and nothing worked. He was wheezing as well as gasping, and when he'd do his big cries, which babies do, it was scary hearing him cry, because it was, this alarm went through you that he's not breathing okay. Something else was wrong. And I remember putting on Facebook with the little bit of percentage I had left is, does anyone know of any doctors available? Colt needs help now. And someone commented, go to Surf Beach Surgery. So I went there early and I got in. That's what I knew. And he knew straight away, the doctor that I saw. He said to me, you need Ventolin. I'll write you a script. You need to go now. Okay, ready? I'm going to do your puffer. One puff. We're only allowed one Ventolin. And they gave us the puffer, the spacer as well. Not immediately, but almost immediately is when I could see the difference in Colt. From that day on, he needed Ventolin to live.
Early days, 20, 30 years ago, the big focus was on lung problems. And then the next round of research was on heart problems and heart attacks, so heart and lungs. And then in the last decade or so, links to learning, links to dementia, links to school outcomes, links to some skin conditions. So at the level of an individual child who's got a condition such as asthma, it's actually really hard to say this bushfire event caused that asthma. All these conditions have got lots of things that cause them, and bushfire smoke and air pollution is one of the many things that can increase your risk of getting them. What that means in reality for parents or people experiencing smoke is that managing air quality both every day, traffic air quality, not standing in the smoke downstream even of, fire pits and barbecues, not standing close to your gas cooker if you've got one, having the range hood on whenever you've got one. It's minimising smoke every day that will give you a huge benefit and really reduce your risk. And they're the things you can control much more easily. You can't stop fires, but you can do what you can to arrest climate change. I think we'd do it a whole lot better next time round.
Big picture, air pollution is a global problem. Wildfire smoke is just one element of that global problem. And air pollution itself, according to the World Health Organization, is responsible for some 7 million deaths a year. So when you're faced with those kind of odds of more countries in the world being susceptible to these fires, we really need more research, and we need to know the answers for the next generation.
The types of things that are being suggested could be around air purifiers and subsidising them so that people are able to purchase them or loan them from health services during bushfire seasons, or having safe community spaces that people can go to and spend the bulk of their time that has a proper air filtration system as well. Having better information available, particularly for vulnerable people, but also pregnant women or women that have, and families that have young children. So part of the point of this is looking at what's been done in the past and how things can be done better in the future during climate events that we're experiencing here in Australia and around the world.
Do you remember when Daddy came home, when you first saw Daddy? Mummy was getting a bit scared about Daddy not being home yet.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember when Daddy came?
Yeah.
And he had black all over him?
Yeah.
He looked like someone else, didn't he?
We did. And all the ash on him.
And he loved seeing you. He was so happy to see you and Cody.
Bubba in your tummy.
Yeah.
Mummy, your tummy.
You were in my tummy. I remember talking to a family, a lady, and she said, oh, they are saying that the smoke is off the charts, toxic. She goes, have you, you've been wearing a mask? And I just remember just absolute, realisation that I had an unborn baby. I was pregnant. And yeah, that really hit me that I hadn't been wearing a mask. Yeah, in the back of your mind, is this baby going to be okay? She was measuring small, not something unusual. It was a routine caesarean. I had to have caesareans for every baby, and it was really confronting. I remember we had the baby. Laura, my youngest, was presented to me, and then you just have this overwhelming sense of, I had the baby in my arms and I'm like, oh, gosh, I hope you're going to be okay. I honestly didn't think, you don't think this far ahead, and all the ramifications or the ripple effects of this one event. She's been such a joy for us, especially after such a huge ordeal. We called her Laura Grace in the end. Just, yeah, it's a little homage to what we went through.
I have concern that, again, we'll be reactive and not proactive, because that's what we do. Most of us have heard or know the statement, you judge a society and a culture by how they look after the most vulnerable. Our most vulnerable, and certainly in my practice, are babies, even before they're born, young children, and older people. They are the most who are impacted by climate change. This is a major event, and we're asleep at the wheel in terms of understanding how to change it in the future. And guess what? It's going to happen. It will keep happening. We know it will. Yet, there's no conversation about it. There's no will to change it, and there's no ready action about it. That just doesn't make sense to me.